What's up, y'all? It's Dr. Paul with Liberty Hill Comics. Welcome to our Happy Holidays show. Hopefully you're burning the Yuletide log, and we've got a great show for you. We got a packed house, super excited about it. Let's get started. Hey, how's everybody doing?
Good. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great.
I got my Christmas Grinch on.
Very nice. I love it. I got green and red. I'm doing something. By the way, before we even do intros, Samuel Smith's Organic Chocolate Stout. I'm going to see how this sounds. Success. Oh, man. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Happy holidays.
That beer is just the same as I like my women, dark and stout.
Tall, too.
And tall.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me, my co-hosts. As always, let's go around the horn. Phil from Phantom Restoration. Say hi to everybody. Tell them where they can find you.
Hey, Dr. Paul. So Phil here, coming to you live as always from the Brooklyn, Queens line here in New York City. I apologize if my mic sounds bad. I don't know what happened. I listened to the show last week too, and it sounded like I was speaking out of a tin can. So I'm gonna have to figure that out for next week. Maybe get a mic here, but I think the mic portion on my headphones that it talks through, I think kind of went. Anyway, as always, drowning in comics, fun stuff. Doing well. You can find me on Instagram at Phantom Restoration or at www.phantomrestoration.com.
And what is your holiday tradition, Phil, with 2 L's?
So my holiday tradition, I usually go back and see the parents, but we kind of adhere to what works well for our schedule. So I'm not going to be there on Christmas Day, but I'll be there just after that on the weekend. So spending time with family.
Awesome. Captain Larry, Flying L Comics. Say hi to everybody. Tell them where they can find you.
Hey, everybody. You can find me on Instagram for the most part at Flying L Comics, also at Facebook and YouTube and eBay, and I think that about covers it. Today, I am broadcasting from Germany. It's a lovely 2:40 in the morning here, so I'm gonna stay a little bit quiet so I don't wake everybody up in the house. But glad to be here. This is a really cool launch party. I mean, I can't wait to see.
I'm super excited. And right. I imagine your holiday tradition is now Christmasnacht.
My holiday tradition, we're still trying to decide what we're going to do for Christmas dinner. So I think we're going to do some sort of Schwein. We'll see. But we, Glühwein Glühwein.
Glühwein.
Gotta get that V in there, Glühwein. But every year I'm here in Germany, and we have our Christmas tree set up. So
I set up a double boiler over here so that I can warm up the Glühwein to the perfect temperature.
Yeah, you got to have the Glühwein, but you got to get the sugar cone and the 190 proof alcohol and melt the sugar into the Glühwein. Do it proper.
All right. Last but not least, my pal, my co-author. Where would I be without you, sir? Shelby of Shelby's Comics. Say hi to everyone. Tell them where they can find you.
Hi, everyone. You can find me right here on YouTube, Shelby Comics. Been a little lax with dropping some content the past month, but it's for a good reason. And the reason why we're here tonight. You can also find me over on Instagram at Shelby's Comics, and probably any other high-end bathroom in Houston, Texas.
That's where he hangs out. What is your Christmas tradition, Shelby?
Since I've been back down here in the South, I do travel home to Louisiana the day after Christmas. Both my parents are passed on, but I do try to visit the kids and the grandson and all that good stuff. So
Awesome.
yeah.
I, for my part, grew up celebrating Christmas. Still do so, kind of secularly, though. I enjoyed the shortest day of the year yesterday. It was the winter solstice.
That's right. I forgot
That
about
was
that.
pretty
Some-
cool.
Well, I fell asleep and I woke up and I thought it was morning, but it was actually evening. It was dark outside at like 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Well, we are simulcasting on Liberty Hill
Really?
Comics, Flying L Comics, and Shelby's Comics all at once. Let's say hi to everybody who joined us. Hugo Danner's here, of course. What's up, Mike? Happy
God.
holidays. Merry Christmas to you. Rick from Morgan from Immaculate Comics is here. What's up,
Rick's
Rick?
here. Hey,
We'll
Rick.
Rick will be getting some props later in the show. Don Carter's here. Hello, Don. Welcome, welcome. Rick Nestor's here as usual. My buddy David the Starman is here. Welcome. The Professor, Peter Alachi. Welcome, welcome. One of the MVPs for our book. Ben Stewart is here. Thank you. Jason Adrift as usual. He's joining us from one of the other channels today. I can tell where they come from. Gerald Yates is here. He says, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah. Hanukkah started already, right? It's not my tradition, but I think it's already started. Knights of Old says, top 3 health tips. The first and most important one is don't try to have a perfect workout. Just make sure you work out. I'll give you that one. Maybe more later. We'll do that on another channel.
Yeah, my mom saw a picture of you from when we were at the Collectors Summit, and she says, "Wow, he's really buff."
Oh my God.
That's what I'm working on. Mr. Collector 123 says, congratulations on the book. Thank you so much. Vulu's here. Thank you. And JSS Brooklyn is here. Looking forward to the link. Not sure which link he means. Maybe he means the
link to the
Kickstarter. The Kickstarter, it's already in the description, actually.
Yeah, should be there.
Silver Spidey says hello, everyone. And Adrift says good sleep. All right. Well, again, welcome to everybody here. Welcome to all the folks that will view this later on demand. We are going to do one long segment today. We're not going to have our normal A and B segment. We're just going to jump right into the preview of the book. And I don't want that view. I want this view. I don't want that
And
view.
that is not the.
No, that's not the view we want.
This view.
There you go.
Yeah, that's not even really the view I wanted. Shelby and I were working on another view, and I don't have it, so I'm going to apologize and just leave it.
I don't. And for some reason, I think you've downloaded an old version. Oh no, you didn't. No, you didn't. I have an old version up there.
I only did it 7 minutes ago, so
I have. For some reason, I don't have the right version up there. But
thank you for correcting me. JSS Brooklyn says Hanukkah actually starts on Christmas night for the first time in many years. Very cool. Well, we're here tonight to give you all a preview of our book. So where to start? We teased it last week, but I think, not everybody saw that. So I think maybe we should give a little intro to it and maybe talk about the origin a little bit. And then we're going to do a full preview. So I guess the beginning for me was starting this journey on comic book conservation, inspired by Jerry the Jitterbug and others, and just started voraciously consuming the literature, the peer-reviewed literature for paper conservation and sharing it, and then building a community from there. And in fact, I think what I'll do is I'll even just plug this for a minute, even before we go into the book. building a community from there, which all of you contributed to. And there's so many people in this Facebook group, the comic book conservation community, that have contributed to my journey in conservation, contributed to other people's, helped out, and ended up being major contributors to the book as well. So thank you, all of you, genuinely. So it started there, and I started doing my videos where I was actually writing a script for my videos. I was writing short bibliography for my videos because I was actually dropping references to you all saying, hey, this is what's next, and this is where Shelby, I don't see you on the screen.
You don't. I don't know why. I was just sending you a message asking if you could get me involved.
Oh man.
There you go.
All right,
Shelby.
that's better anyway. There we go.
Better.
That's my bad. And then I met Shelby through the group, and I'll let him tell the tale from there.
Well, so first off, I apologize to Paul. I uploaded the wrong one. The only difference in this presentation and the one Paul is showing is our Kickstarter is completely funded. We funded in 2 hours, which was crazy. 17 people have pledged so far. But like Paul said, there is a link down in the description. If you would like to go take part in this presentation, I will be talking about some of the rewards and things that you'll get. So yeah, so stay tuned for that. All right, my quick intro is I've been pressing and cleaning. You know, I'm a lifelong comic book collector, but you know, I started pressing and cleaning probably about 4 or 5 years ago during the pandemic. Was kind of getting bored with it, to be honest with you. It's like there's got to be something more, and then every person that could afford a Chinese press off of Amazon was setting up their own pressing and cleaning business, and that was not what I was interested in. You know, I was interested in preserving these beautiful books that have given me so much joy and such over my lifetime. And I found Jerry's stuff, but you know, he was like way beyond what I was wanting to do with like leaf casting and everything. And then somehow I found Paul and Captain Larry's channels, and it was more approachable, right? They really took time, broke down what you needed to do in terms of conservation, in terms of wet cleaning. Oh, and I had been working with Rick Morgan, Immaculate Comics, for about 2 years because I was really a big fan of his product, and I was using that to wet clean. You know, not full immersion, just, you know, spot cleaning with a cotton round. And yeah, so I was already a little bit interested in that. Yeah, Rick and I mean, I know I was one of his early adopters because I even got one of the prototypes of his capable staple tool. Like he had made, I think, 4 of them or something, and I got one of the prototypes. I think almost everything I own is prototypes, but definitely go check out immaculatecomics.com for all your pressing and cleaning needs.
I'll back that up too. I use all of Rick's tools. They're great.
Yeah, he's OG. His channel was another one of my inspirations as well.
Yep.
And exactly. I mean, but you know, it's just something about the way Paul and Larry presented it that really made the full immersion wet cleaning approachable, the tear seals, you know, things like that, because I'm a bit of a condition snob and I overlook things because it's like, oh, it's got a tear in it, or it's got, you know, a staple pop or something like that. And yeah, it just opened up a whole new avenue, and you know, been doing this for probably about a year or so, and yeah, joined the community, and I made a nuisance myself until Paul actually started acknowledging me, and I told him,
it's funny because it's true.
It is true, and I told him early on, I said, you may not know this, but we're going to become friends. And yeah, I kept annoying him until he started till he brought me into the fold, so to speak.
Yeah,
So,
well, I made him a moderator and I gave him an assignment. He blew me away with it, and I said, "We're writing a book," and here we are.
Now, I want to talk about this cover. I mean, Shelby,
Yeah,
that is a
all
cool
Shelby,
cover.
100% Shelby.
so
I mean-
this is an evolution. I wanted to do a more EC horror cover, but my best days of drawing are way behind me. I mean, my first degree was in visual.
I'm gonna argue against that. I think you did.
Well,
a hell of a job.
I'm going to tell you a secret here in a second. So, my first degree is in visual design and stuff, and I haven't picked up a charcoal pencil and drawn anything in years. But I am I still do a lot of visual design with my work, and I've been using Adobe products for like 25 years, and a lot of my work right now deals a lot with AI. And so I was able to work with the Adobe AI, and it wouldn't do horror very well because of its it don't want to do that stuff, right? Because it's bad stuff, right?
Right.
But
Chat GPT create an image of a zombie apocalypse. It just says,
Yeah,
I'm
they're
not
not-
doing
it's not
that.
gonna do it,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
But it would let me start making a bunch of science fiction. And this is probably like the 15th or 16th iteration of me going through there. It's actually made up of about 3 different images. Now, the stuff on the top is all my artwork. I did do all the fonts, the layouts, the planets, the shadowing and things like that, and put all that together. But yeah, and I did take the female into Photoshop and manipulated it and things like that to get it to where I wanted it. So
Yeah.
It looks great. You know, my artistic talent left with the Etch a Sketch, so I think you did fantastic.
Well,
Yeah, the
Shelby's
layout-
been just a phenomenal collaborator. I feel like, where I have blind spots in my ability to put a book together, he's really strong. Maybe where he has blind spots in his ability, I'm really strong. So it's just been a great collaboration.
it has.
Well,
It has. And we've been friends through it, right? Like one thing that Paul and I, made a deal from the beginning is that, hey, we're going to be honest with one another, and we're not going to get upset. We're not going to get, twisted up over everything. That what we're trying to do is make the best product, and that we're going to be open to criticism with each other. But
Exactly.
and I think we said that, but I don't think we've had a disagreement over this.
No, it really helps when you don't have ego about your work, when you can look at it objectively and say, that's right, that's better, the way you changed it or whatever. So, all right, I think that's enough background. Let's show the people what they came to see, Shelby.
Yeah, let's see it.
All right, good stuff. So first thing, go into the next slide. So the first thing I want to do is acknowledge the community and the people that have helped us. So, of course, those people that shared their stories: Jerry the Jitterbug, Larry, Peter Alachi, Phil here, and Rick Morgan. I reached out to them early on, and through their videos and through their work, and so I really want you part of this. And then I went through the community pages of our Facebook group, and I just, I picked out some of the things. If you weren't picked, I mean, it wasn't because you don't do great work. It was like people was doing things that I needed images for in the book, to be honest with you. And without Paul and I having to go and set up things or try to create things, it's like I'm just going to, use my resources that are at hand. And thank you to all of y'all that allowed me to use your images and help make this book possible. So Alex, Alan, Chris Trump, who actually reviewed a chapter for us, Don Carter, I think I saw him in the chat here earlier, Jason, Jim with Comic Clean.
Comic Clean.
Comic Clean, sorry. Sorry, Rick.
Sorry, Rick. Sorry, Jim.
Sorry, Jim. Mindy, Peter, and Robert. So thank you all for agreeing. They all are getting acknowledgments in the book, and they've, of course, been credited with everything. So,
Shelby, we had a special OG conservator that we interviewed that has a section in the book. I don't see her name here. Are you going to talk about her later?
I am talking about her later. I was saving it. Yes.
All right. That'll be a teaser then.
That's a tease.
I want to do a special shout out right here. Yeah, Jason, in some way, is really the catalyst for this book, right? Jason started putting together crib notes.
That's true.
And putting out for everybody, which is great. I really appreciate it. And I said, Shelby, Jason's just created a post. It's just a post. It's going to disappear. You're a moderator now in the Facebook group. Create a permanent document that'll be evergreen that we can put at the top. And what he created blew me away. And that's when I said, we're writing a book. So thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Jason.
Actually, for your initial effort and in doing that and just trying to be a great, member of the community and help everybody. But also thanks for, unwittingly being the catalyst here.
And I had reached out to Jason in a chat, and I'll be honest with you, I was probably about 2 weeks or so unemployed. My mind was not into this, and I asked Jason to just, I don't know, put something down, move it over to I think that's what it was. I think I told Jason, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. I said, can you put this in a Word file and you can dump it in the file folder so everybody can do it because the post will get lost. And I looked at what Jason did, and it's on wet cleaning and things. And that was actually the first chapter I wrote. It's now chapter 4 in the book, but it's the first full chapter that I wrote. And that's what Paul initially saw was that chapter. Yeah. And just kind of blossomed.
By the way, Jason's got his own YouTube channel. Definitely check it out. He's a meticulous conservator and one of the rising stars of our community.
For sure. He's doing a lot of work.
All right.
He has jumped in there with both feet.
We got a lot to cover.
All right. You can go ahead to the next one. Yeah. Move on. A little bit about the Kickstarter. So we got levels for everybody. You can, like Paul said, the link is down in the description. So if you only got $10, $20, you can get some digital copies. You can get exclusive art. Some of the stretch goals are already unlocked now because we've made it to $1,500. The book will be available on Amazon in February of 2025. The soft cover is going to be $60, which we went back and forth on the price, but our printing costs for these are about $25, and then Amazon takes 40%. So we're not making much money on these. But
also, Shelby, you should tell them it's a big book, it's a large format book, it's a thick book. It's also printed in Amazon's highest quality paper.
It is. Everything's the highest quality that we could do going through print on demand. So we didn't have to make a guess of how many things we needed to print. And then 20 years later, we still have a bunch of books in our closet. The hardcover is going to be $79.95. Now, through the Kickstarter, it's $10 off, basically. So the soft cover plus all the exclusives that you will not get through Amazon is only $50. The hardcover plus all the exclusives, which you cannot get through Amazon, is only $70. So you get a $10 discount if you would like to support us through the Kickstarter. And there are limited quantities on some of these discounts. So I think the soft cover, there's only 20, and the hardcover, I think it may also be 20 also. But and then there's of course our exclusive special edition that we're going to do. It's going to be a matte spot color, beautiful, thicker, glossier pages. It's going to be pretty amazing. So,
and that's kind of the highest tier that you can support if you want to be a backer. That's
Yeah.
going to be limited and double signed by Shelby and I. So the bottom line is, if you're a friend of the channel, if you want to support us, get in early. This is the lowest price you'll get. Plus, you're going to get the exclusives through Kickstarter. And we appreciate everybody that's already backed. I just checked it; it's over $1,800. We have.
Oh my God!
we have 20 backers, and we're only $175 away from our second stretch goal. So
Awesome.
that's almost certainly going to be unlocked. And we couldn't be more thankful for everybody that's backed it so far. Thank you so much. And again, the Kickstarter. So even though it's fully funded already, the Kickstarter is going to be open through January 31st. And it is the best place for you to get the book through January 31st. After that, it'll be available on Amazon. And during that time period, again, you're basically going to get $10 off. Plus, you're going to get digital exclusives and the stretch goal perks. So that's where you want to go through January 31st. After January 31st, get it on Amazon.
All right. So let's start looking at some of the previews here.
Yeah.
When is it after the after it ends? I'm going to send everybody a thing after it ends, so you will not be charged until that time. So that will be at the end of January. Gerald, to answer your question.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Once it
Yes,
gets fully funded.
Good.
Uh,
Phil was going to say something, Paul.
No. I was just clarifying.
I think he was just adding to what you said. Yeah.
The timeline of the Kickstarter ends and it's been fully funded, then your card gets charged.
Yep. So basically on or about January 31st. Here's how I like elevator pitch for the book. What the book is to me is I spent a few years sifting through the paper conservation literature, pulling out everything that I thought was pertinent to comic books, digesting it, synthesizing it, trying to apply it to comic books. And then Shelby did most of the writing. And we put it together. But it's basically not us saying, hey, look, we're the most important conservators, the most experienced, the best, anything like that at all. What it is it's saying, hey, we both went through PhD programs. We know how to digest a literature and review it and come up with analysis on it, and then look at it and say, what are the next logical things? So we applied those skills to comic book conservation, and we shared it with you. So it's not meant to be even fully comprehensive. It's not meant to be authoritative in the same way that science changes all the time as people publish new experiments and we test them and we figure things out and we improve. I fully expect some of the stuff in the book will be not obsoleted, but there will be better ways to do some of the stuff in the future. And so we fully intend to have this be a resource that, I don't know how long it'll take, whether it's 4 years or who knows, but there'll be a second edition of the book that updates it as science gets updated. So that's what it is. That's in a nutshell what the book is. Good. Yeah, and I'll segue to Shelby here. But because of Shelby's incredible background in design, it tells a story. So this is where my skill set and his, my blind spots and his, they line up, and we come together to do something that's really more than the individuals. It really doesn't read like a scientific book. It reads like a lot of it reads like storybook, and that's all Shelby's doing.
I'll actually share a little bit if Peter doesn't mind. What he actually sent us today. He said it's comprehensive, science-based, without being overly sciencey or injecting difficult concepts, which he likes. It's needed for comic book conservators standardize their work. It's general artsy enough to please non-scientists, but it's focused enough to serve as a textbook or an intro course to paper and document conservation.
Yep.
And that's from the professor.
Yes.
Yep.
And you do it while keeping it interesting, entertaining, and informative. It even gave me a chuckle when reading. And it isn't easy to do with technical stuff, and you managed it brilliantly.
Aw.
Thank you, Peter.
Excellent. Very well.
Great work.
Knights of Old said, just backed. Thank you so much, Knights. So Adrift, yeah, I lost count. What do we have? 60 specific references that we list? Some of them didn't make the cut, Jason.
Some did not make the cut, but it's around 60. And I'm going to show an excerpt of what it is that we did with those.
Friend of the show, Kat says, how much to add Kitty Paw signature?
Kitty Paws.
I think we can make that happen for you, Kat.
We're trying. I'm trying to get Jack and a thing of ink. We'll see what happens. And the way I looked at this book was an educational resource, right? It's something you could keep at your desk, and you could reach for. I need to look something up, because that's a lot of the questions that we get in community is, how do I do this? How does this affect it? What happens if I do this, right? And we try to answer all those questions in the book. So it's really a resource manual. And then, of course, accomplished for the community. It's over 250 pages, over 250 images that just really take you along the journey. So go ahead, Paul. We're going to move a little faster here.
Yes, sir.
So the first, I'm going to kind of go through each chapter and show you all a little bit of preview. So the first chapter is an introduction to conservation, just really laying out the cultural significance of comic books, pressing, cleaning, restoration, and all the good stuff you'd think would be in an intro chapter. Go ahead, Paul. Here is chapter 1. You're looking at it as a spread, as if you had the 2 pages open. You can see some of the headings there. We look at comics through the culture, through the art, and through history. Paul and I both love the history of comic books so much. And, I own a lot of comic book history books, but how many times can you write the history of Action Comics #1? And this is coming at it from a different point of view. And I really enjoyed writing this. Go ahead, Paul. So here's a little bit of what I did in the book. One thing I did is there's going to be like small literature reviews at the end of the chapters, but Paul and I have so much knowledge and stories that I also stuck some things in at the end of the chapters called The More You Know. This one is about the Christine Farrell collection, which if you watch our shows, Paul and I did a 2-parter on that. And just showing a little bit of the difference between the fair market value of a book and what those books are getting in conserved grade. So it's just a little bit of a story to kind of level set what we're talking about in terms of conservation and where we would like to go in terms of conservation in the future.
So what are the actual dimensions of the book? I said it was an oversized book, but this is
it is 8.5 by 11, so it's magazine size. Most books are 8.5 by 9 or something like that. They're smaller, like novel size. But this is definitely a big boy, or big girl, however you want to think of it, and definitely oversized.
Yeah, and it really looks beautiful. I mean, Shelby's, we've already got it in print, and Amazon does an amazing job.
It's awesome. Really great.
Yeah. So these pictures, I couldn't be more pleased with.
All right, chapter dose. So while we are going beyond pressing and cleaning, like I talked about with my story a little bit earlier, pressing and cleaning is the foundation of conservation. Okay, dry cleaning, humidification, and pressing. That is where we start out at, and that is where you should start at. Go ahead, Phil.
I just want to say that as someone that does this professionally, man, oh man, do I wish that I had a book like this, when I first started getting, and I say that specifically at the point you just mentioned, because of all the stuff I was trained under, the main thing lacking was dry cleaning, pressing, and humidification. So it's like it's kind of like that was what I had to search out on my own because that wasn't in the traditional restoration processes that were done. So it's just I'm so happy to see this come to fruition now, and I'm happy to have be getting a copy myself, despite already knowing quite a bit. What's going to be in the book, but man, it's such a I was like getting goosebumps looking through this, and then seeing some of like as Jason mentioned, like just seeing all the references. It's like this is like you guys aren't messing around. Like as you always like to quote literature. That's what you did in the book, so I'm not messing around.
I did as much rereading and resynthesizing as I did writing on some of these chapters. Shelby, can you answer Silver Spidey here?
I will answer that. So, I apologize. New Zealand was not part of the group of nations that were suggested for me to include. However, if you are part of the Comic Book Conservation Community Facebook group, and we hope that you are, message me through Facebook, and I will ship you to New Zealand.
Yeah, we'll get you a
I'm
copy.
sure Amazon will ship to New Zealand, but if you're wanting to us work out something where you support the Kickstarter and maybe you just choose something, or we'll work out something. Trust me, we can work out something for you, sir.
Absolutely. Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the deluxe edition just briefly. Yeah, Knights of Old. The deluxe edition is not fully designed yet. I don't know if it's going to be on handmade paper. Probably not. That might be just a little bit out of budget, but it'll be on some very nice paper.
It's going to be hardbound, heavy stock. I want to do what's called a spot gloss print or UV print. So it'll be a matte finish, but then certain parts of the cover is going to be gloss. So really pop and such. It'll have the interior is not going to be white. It'll be blue or red, something nice. You're going to have also a hand numbered plate on the inside where we number the editions, and then it's going to be on heavier stock, super glossy paper on the inside. It's going to have whatever the interior color is going to be. The binding is going to be that color, and so it's going to be really nice.
So for everybody at home, what Shelby's holding up is a prototype book.
Yeah, this is basically the proof for the soft cover. So, but the hardcover will be very similar to Matt's book, which, like I said, the first page is white. For the special edition, it's going to be, a blue or a red. We haven't talked about it yet.
So you definitely the deluxe edition. You're getting something not the same. It's a step up. It's definitely going to be fancier, and again, it'll be double signed by us and numbered and limited. So,
well, that's the most important part. I just want it for the autographs.
Woohoo!
Oh, thank you, Gerald. Conservation legend. Thank you.
Thank you. Wow. I'm gonna go check
All right.
that. You ready for next slide?
Yeah, please go ahead. So here is some of the things, actually, like Phil was just alluding to. We take you through, not in gross detail or anything. We assume that you probably have a little bit of background in pressing and cleaning, but it is an informational resource. So we describe to you the process of humidification. We actually go into detail on some of the myths of humidification. We bring in what the research has suggested on humidification. And I'm using that as an example because this page is about humidification. We also go into a bit of detail on heat press and then cold press. I don't see a lot of stuff out there talking about the cold press part of it, and that's really important. And of course, using some of Rick's products here, the acrylic glass on this beautiful or plastic, or acrylic is plastic, whatever. Like, let me say it like that, of this beautiful Tales of Suspense first appearance of Iron Man. Is so important because the things that you press will revert back. It will come back if you don't give it that rest period through a cold press. Go ahead, Paul, unless you want to add something real quick. And then Paul's beautiful antique. I want one so bad.
The seal.
Yeah. The mount.
I just have a little announcement to make. We just passed the second stretch goal, so
Oh my God!
Everybody's getting all of the extra perks.
Everybody that is, will get the extra
Thank
perks.
you.
I think it's a bookmark or
Gerald
something.
probably
like
pushed us over. Don says, thanks for doing this so well done. Thank you so much, Don. Appreciate you. Lawston says, shoot, might have to do the hardback signed. Well, we wanted to make it so that it was, it was something special, right? It was worth the extra ducats if you're gonna spend the money, get something meaningful.
So, just a little bit again. Thank you to Rick. I want one of these Vivor presses. That company, I used to do screen printing, and they are the top company in terms of screen printing. And they have some amazing products. And I'm telling you, it's probably going to be about a $250 press, but that is probably the best press you can buy is these Vivor. Any Vivor products, even if you want some silk screen or things like that. Great products. I knew of them, like I said, back when I did silk screen t-shirts. But you can get by with just a normal, $80 or $100 press like we show there. We also go through the steps of the comic stack when we talk about our methods with it and why we do our methods with it. Because there are the books out there that talk about the stack, but there is some science behind in terms of the diffusion of the moisture that's within the pages of why we choose our stack to be a certain way. Go ahead,
right?
Paul.
Yeah, there's a lot of material out there. There's a lot of pressers out there that have shared, their methods. There's a lot of pressers way better at pressing than I am. But we thought it's fundamental to the rest of the conservation book. We have to do a chapter on it. So by no means do we think this chapter is the first and last word on cleaning and pressing. It's a basic overview, and it's how we like to do it and why. And again, everything is from the perspective of what does the literature say, right? So what does the literature say about humidification and pressing? And so we put as much of that in there as we could. And as Shelby said, there's also some misinformation out there. I think it's just some cleaning and pressing habits have been passed on, and they're not rooted very well in science or paper, technology or thermodynamics. So we tried to debunk some of those. I think, in medicine, there's a thing called the practice of medicine is whether it's science-based or eminence-based. And eminence-based used to be when basically you would say, well, this guy's the best surgeon at this, and he says to do it this way, so that must be the best way. And that's actually a logical fallacy, right? So there are people that are much better pressers than I am, but they still do some things incorrectly. And so not to call anybody out, but we just presented what the best science is, right?
Yeah.
And it's the intention here is for all of us to grow our skill set better and make sure that we're preserving these books and giving them the best chance to survive into the next century or two. So
exactly, because it is about conservation. Rick, get those postal service people back on the job so we can ship to Canada. So right now, y'all still have a strike going on. And Gerald, we do have a resource page in the book that has everybody's links and resources, even to the places that we buy our own conservation materials from, like Carriage House and Talus and things like that. So
absolutely,
all that is.
Yeah, there's a whole section of the book called the resources to help direct you to some of the things that we find most useful.
Exactly. All right, go ahead, Paul. We're going to keep moving ahead. Chapter 3. So this is the chapter where we really start diving into the traditional conservation techniques, because that is what this book is mainly about. Well, it is about conservation, but it's about, like Paul said, go into that literature, seeing what is applicable, because let's face it, these people out there in paper conservation, they're trying to do old Japanese text or, things like that. They don't deal in pulp paper. Pulp paper is disposable, man. They could care less. So we really had to, and Paul really did, and then introduced me to it, the literature that was relevant to pulp paper and how we could apply it. Go ahead, Paul. Anytime I pause, just keep going. There is going to be, this is not just a replication of things that you find on our videos. We have brand new pictures you've never seen. Here's an example. This is from Phantom Restoration. That guy over there, Phil, one of the books that he did, and what you can do with just simple, right? Part of the thing of the book is minimal intervention, and you start with the smallest, most unobtrusive intervention, and then work your way up. And showing what you can do with minimal intervention is so important to the book and the conservation. Do you have anything you want to add here to this?
I'll just add to that concept that you said of this is not just a summary or rehash of stuff you can see on our YouTube channels. We easily have 1,000 man hours in this, and that's with us already knowing the content of our YouTube channels. This is so much more than the content we have there. It's a summary of it. It's putting it all at your fingertips. It's a better organization. Could you spend a few hundred hours and review our YouTube channels and put together your own crib notes and come up with something? You could, and it probably contain about a third of what we have in this book. So just to give you a sense of, this book is way beyond what we have on our YouTube channels. Also, before we move on, Ben, the Bien Fang is it's tops. It's up there with Seal. Yeah. So absolutely one of the best presses out there.
Phil, did you have anything you wanted to add to your because I know you and I talked early on about this idea of minimal intervention. That
I actually just to make a note, if there were still last minute changes being made on some of these, reading the blurb on that book there, that the Famous Funnies Christmas cover, that to your point of less is more, all that was done is what you see there. I didn't even humidify and press it after that because the spine was so weak at the top half that I was afraid of splitting occurring, but I was able to at least refold carefully paper there and get it back in its correct orientation. But I didn't even humidify and press. Really, less is more there. So yeah.
Okay. I will fix that. I'll make a mental note. But yes, that was the main point of that picture, was just showing how you refold things and bring it back, and minimal invasive treatment.
Thank you, Austin. Appreciate you. Glad to have you here on the channel. Glad to have you as a backer. Thank Carolyn too.
All right, go ahead, Paul. All right, and then I don't really get into gross detail, but I at least want to show some images in the book, or Paul and I do, of the different materials we use, right? So the Pentel eraser, the small fine eraser, the kneading eraser, and the white eraser, the micro spatula, the document cleaning pad. All of these things are your first steps in any kind of conservation, and those are the things that are most essential in your toolbox.
Absolutely. So this is all still just fundamentals, right? Everybody's probably
fundamentals. Go ahead. Let's go on to chapter 4 here. So
here's where we start getting exciting.
This is the biggest thing, right? Is wet cleaning. It's probably one of the bigger hurdles, I feel, in really learning conservation, because of the difficulty of the disassembling the book, the going against everything in your soul of sticking a comic book in water. But it is probably what's going to bring you the biggest payoff in terms of that. And mainly we're talking about deacidification.
Yep.
So I wanted to get in a little bit of gross detail here about staples. I get a lot of questions about staples, and Paul did an excellent job of showing how you can remake staples. We go through some of the formulas that we use to clean rusted staples, and then of course, if you didn't know, the tools that Rick has, he actually has holes drilled in that you can rebend staples to the appropriate Silver Age or Golden Age length. And it comes with that little dowel where you can make that little bend that we like to see with our staples. And so his tool is so much more than just removing and putting a staple back.
Shelby can gush for hours about Rick's tool.
I'm sorry.
Well, I have to.
It is a phenomenal tool.
Used tool. Yeah, I use this tool. This is probably my most used go-to tool.
So to disassemble
Paul.
the book, you have to, or rather to wet clean, you have to disassemble. So this is the chapter where we have all of the stuff about disassembly and staples.
Exactly. And this is our example here of the from the literature. So at the end of most of the chapters, I have what's called from the literature. This is like a mini science paper. So it has citations, it has references. It's written just like you were going to publish an article in a scientific journal. It's written in APA style, because that's the style I know. And so for us science nerds, these few pages I thought was really great to add. This has a very deep discussion of deacidification, the different methods, and why it's important. I was just talking to Matt Nelson, and I said, Matt, these books, it doesn't matter if they're in a slab, they're still going to keep acidified and falling apart and eating themselves. And he said, that's right. That's 100% right. Our slabs are not made to prevent that type of damage to the book. And that's why it's so important to understand these conservation techniques where we can hopefully stop that process, or at least add more years onto the life of the book.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Paul.
The paper is autodestructive, is what it's known as in the literature, meaning it literally will eat itself up over time. And all you can really do is slow that down unless you actively deacidify it. And then you can reverse it and actually re-strengthen the paper. So
and I know Larry has shared many stories about breaking up in a slab and a book just start crumbling.
Just powder comes out.
And for those of you that aren't super sciencey and don't want something super sciencey, I want to say, actually, this was something Shelby felt really strongly about. In the regular text, we don't have references. In the regular chapter text, you just read what we say is the summary of the literature. And then when you get to the end of the chapter, you have this quick summary that scrolls through all the literature that we thought was pertinent. And then after it, a short bibliography for that chapter. Exactly. So it doesn't bog down the reading. And again, that was all Shelby.
Yeah. Stain removal, man. Oh my God. I cannot tell you how many times I've had discussions about stain removal, and particularly bleaching and blue LED treatment. So go ahead, Paul. We get into a very deep dive of the pros and cons of certain bleaching treatments. I mean, your best bleaching treatment is going to be calcium hydroxide. Okay. The same thing you use for deacidification. Again, minimally invasive treatment, starting with that, seeing what happens. Then we can start talking about other things like peroxide or photo bleaching. And there are good ways and bad ways to approach that. And again, we're drawing from the literature on that information and presenting it here and showing some examples. Of course, Rick's great blue LED array, some of the masks that he creates and he has offered in his videos to create masks for people if you would reach out to him. To help protect some of the colors, because some colors are more photosensitive than other colors, such as reds and oranges. And you can fade that book pretty quickly.
And
Thank you,
here
Collecting
too.
Chaos.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Collecting Chaos, and anybody's guest. Welcome to both of you, and thank you both for backing. I want to mention here too the whole Captain Mike crew, the whole Captain Mike cleaning and pressing group on Facebook. It's just such a great community. And, you know, we don't post a lot there because that's cleaning and pressing. And Captain Mike kind of has a line. We do cleaning and pressing if it's conservation. It's not really in our group, which I absolutely respect. That makes perfect sense. So we have obviously our conservation group. It's a smaller group. But out of that group came two really useful books and some groundbreaking stuff and some stuff that, you know, credit where it's due. The whitening and stain removal and whitening book put out by the authors from that group, you know, several of them are in our conservation group, two of which we worked with directly for this book, Jim Wolgert and Chris Trump.
Yep.
And, you know, Jim was the one who developed the hop method that they published in that book. Chris was the one who worked out the blue LED method that they published in that book. I think both of those, and I'm record, right? I've said this before. I think that's the best sort of practical application place to start if you want to learn about those techniques. That said, there's a lot of information in the literature. Those wavelengths of blue light were known. I genuinely believe Chris Trump came upon them independently. He wasn't aware of the literature, but those wavelengths were in the literature prior to that. Nevertheless, you know, these guys made major contributions. We credit them. We mention the book.
We do.
We summarize that. And in fact, you know, we talk about where it aligns with the literature and where there are a few things the literature suggests you might want to do a little differently than what they publish in that book, based on credible science, peer-reviewed work. And we've talked to both of those authors about it. And, you know, again, we credit them. And, you know, when you're a frontiersman, you don't get everything right the first time. And they got an awful lot right. And so by no means are we throwing stones or discrediting that work. What we're saying is that's a great starting place, but it shouldn't quite be the last word, because there's stuff known to take that work and even take it to the next level. So there's a lot of that in this chapter.
Right. So the long and short is, yes, they were involved. Yes, they know about this. Yes, they gave input. Chris reviewed this whole chapter. But Paul and I, coming from a research science background, the cornerstone of good science is to take what has already been started and build upon it.
Yep.
To advance it. That's what science is about advancing. All right, go ahead, Paul. I think this might have been the only pages I had on this one. Yep. Carousels and reinforcement. Oh my God. Japanese paper. I'm telling you, I think this is maybe easier than I thought wet cleaning is, but it's so important.
Yeah.
And thank you to Peter. And thank you to Peter for his help with the sizing portion. Go ahead, Paul. So one of the biggest questions we have, I think we get probably weekly, is when to use methyl cellulose, when to use wheat paste. So we go through the differences of those adhesives, how you can work those adhesives in order to create the best product that you want and quality with your conservation project.
Yeah.
And again, you know, some of Paul's sexy pictures, as I call them, of Dewey mending with the tissue paper and the brush and such. And this is where I learned my process, is watching him, watching his close-ups, and even trimming and things like that. And there's also some things in here about the nuance of cover repairs, that some questions I get that's not in any of the videos.
Absolutely. I like just hey Mike now comment. It's infectious, isn't it? Yeah, I tend to be a little bit more reserved, but we've also been through a process, man. We've been working day and night on this for a long time. So in some ways, it's fun right now, but I'm also a little bit exhausted.
I'm exhausted. I'm mentally drained, and Paul and I are both insomniacs. We sometimes get on the phone at like 4-5 a.m. in the morning, and we talk for like 2 hours about the book.
Yeah.
And we did that many mornings.
Most of my days writing on this book started before 4 in the morning.
All right, go ahead, Paul. All right, restoration. This is thank you to, I think, Phil, where Phil presented so much great stuff on restoration removal that is a big part of his job sometimes, where people send him books. Don't let me put words in your mouth, Phil. Please speak up at any time.
Oh, no, I mean, hey.
And I think I accidentally didn't put the right thing.
Shameless plug, but yeah, someone just dropped off this book, which was a purple yellow label signed by Stan Lee AF-15 that I'm going to remove restoration from and keep the yellow label, the witness signature, and we're going to submit it for a lower grade universal book. But this book has reinforcement at the staples and color touch, and you can see it's a very nice copy. No marble.
Yeah, wow.
It's an incredible book. Quite a lot of what I do is restoration removal. I do more of that than I do full line restoration. So
that was a really beautiful book.
Experience with that.
That was a really beautiful book until some goofball scribbled on it.
What?
By the way, I'm a Stan Lee fan. Don't at me.
Oh gosh, no, that's true.
I think Rick just got a Amazing Fantasy 15. Rick Morgan to work on. So those are going around right now.
Yeah.
Yes, Nori Paste is mentioned, Jason. We talk about that. All right, go ahead, Paul.
Rick wants to know how many hours you think you're going to have in that book, Phil, as we go.
So, the only real detractor about doing this by myself is that I only have one set of these. So for me to do it by myself, there's a lot of coming back to it, especially like removing color touch. Even CGC has stated that they have issues catching color touch sometimes. I've had people buy, it's rare, but it just to say that it can happen because sometimes it's the nuance of catching things. It's tough to say. I have to do the assessment to know where all the color touch is, remove the spine roll, dry clean, press the book, remove the reinforcement. I mean, you're looking at, I don't know, maybe it's just the way my brain works, but it's hard for me to always answer those kind of questions unless it's just a simple dry clean press, and then I can be like, it's going to be so many hours. Something like this, I work at it and then I come back to it, and then I work at it and then I come back to it. I mean, more somewhere around at least 10 hours, I would say. I mean, to give some some actual number. So it is, there's few of us that handle books of this caliber because we are crazy. So at least the way that I do it, there's kind of a method to the madness. So that way I don't cause any oopsies, because when you're dealing with a book in its current state that's worth $20,000, there's no margin for whoops or error. So
so answer some questions. Alan, I used your Yankee Comics #1 as an example of something else, but I do still have all your pictures, and you never know where they might end up at, but you will be notified ahead of time. Thank you to Phil again. I really enjoyed writing this paper because I learned so much in the literature about tape removal, adhesive removal, and things. These are two beautiful jobs that Phil did with removing tape you won't see anyplace else except in this book and a discussion of that. Go ahead, Paul.
Tape
And
removal
what I'm
huge.
very
I think tape
proud of,
removal is another thing that really intimidates people.
it is. And so I'm really proud of this section. This is from the literature, a not so brief history of tape and adhesive removal techniques.
That's so cool to see.
I go through the history of tape. Every single tape you could expect to find, understanding the difference between rubber-based paste, synthetic tape, tapes, polymer tapes, and the different types, even understanding polar and non-polar solvents and what they're best for. And there's actually a table that shows you that in this part. And I think this is probably about a 5 pages. It's probably the longest from the literature, but tape was such an important, because we get so many questions about tape.
Absolutely.
That I felt is important to really provide as much information as possible.
And there's so much good science on tape removal because tape was used in libraries and used on documents for, approximately 100 years. And then, the next conservator along realized, hey, this tape is completely destroying this document. We got to figure this out. So there's been really great work by some excellent conservators. There's a lot in the literature on it. So there's really no need to guess about tape removal. All of the information's out there. And all we did, again, was reach out, synthesize it, do a little bit of practical application in our own hands and some of our friends, and then, summarize it for you here.
Yeah, Nori Page says consider archival. And to correct real quick, Lawson's question to you, Phil, was, can you have you looked at the book close enough to judge a percentage of color touch that's on that book that you feel like is going to need?
The AF-15.
Oh, I mean, I can see, I can look at it, and in the first pass, I was able to identify probably like 80% of it. But that's the thing. When doing this long enough, I know like there's no certainties. I'm not going to look at it for 5 minutes and say, oh, I found it all. It's about this much. Like I know very well I'm probably going to have to come back to it a few days and say, oh, hey, look, here's a little more that I missed the first time, because you're just even veterans that have been looking at books for decades, you miss stuff. Your eyes trained to look at certain things, so I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, how about if you answer like this? Once you remove the color touch, do you think it's going to be like a 1.5, 2.0?
Oh, that question. So, okay, gotcha.
That will help answer the amount of color touch, right?
That's part of the responsibility on me in that, it's easy enough to remove it, but I do enough of this to know. I always have the same discussion, especially in a book like this, with people saying, what's your cutoff point? Like, I'll have a good judge before I remove everything what the technical grade might be, and if it's going to be lower than your expectations, then I advise we just leave the book alone. It depends on how much money you have into it, but oftentimes, unless I'm destroying the book, which I flat out refuse to do now, like I in the past, there was one book that it had such an extensive amount. I was pushed by the client. I want to get this all removed, and it was the last time that I didn't say no, because you also have to know when sometimes the book is what it is, and you just have to kind of leave it alone. Sorry, I kind of got off on a little bit of a tangent there.
That's right.
No, that's a perfect way to say it, though. I mean, because you get through your mental process of what it is you would do.
To answer your question, this specific copy came in, and it was, just so I'm not mistaken, so this was a 4.0. And I think just based on what I looked at in my like, I'm about 80% sure initial look, I was confident that it's going to be about a 2.5 with a swing either way. universal once I remove everything. And the client said, that sounds good to me. Let's proceed. So I told him, like, that means it could come back a 2, but it could come back a 2, 5, or 3. There's no guarantees in it, because sometimes, you know, I usually am very good at assessing where all the color touches once I start, but sometimes you start and then you get it all done and you say, oh, I missed that there, and that wasn't in your overall assessment on what the grade might be after. It's just, you know, so.
All right.
Nerve-wracking work.
It is, yes. So, all right. So chapter 8, the art of leaf casting. So Paul and I will be the first ones to admit that we don't do a ton of leaf casting. Both of us have actually just kind of started on journeys with this, but we pulled from a ton of material on this, worked with and talked to numerous people that do leaf casting quite a bit. And so we feel confident in our presentation of the materials and techniques, because there are a lot of different ways in which you can leaf cast and such. So
this chapter, I think, is in many ways, to me, this is kind of the heart of the book. Although I haven't been leaf casting a lot of comic books, I haven't done a lot on my channel. I've actually been making handmade paper for over a decade. And what we found is there's actually quite a bit of literature on leaf casting, and that all of the literature says, study the art of handmade paper. That's fundamental. Just like if you want to go play basketball, dribble, shoot free throws, right? Hit layups. The fundamental skill of leaf casting is handmade paper. And I do actually have a fair amount of experience with that. And so what we did was we reread everything that we could find that's been published on leaf casting in the conservation literature. We summarized it for you here, and we synthesized what of it is appropriate for comic books and what of it really doesn't apply to comic books, because the sorts of paper they're dealing with are different. And so this chapter was the hardest one the most difficult one to write, because I think in many ways it's the most important one. It's kind of the heart of the book. I think where a lot of people will buy the book for this chapter, and it is not information available anywhere on YouTube, anywhere on anybody else's, any page or anything. The only way to pull together this information is to spend a few hundred hours combing the literature, reading all of it, and then synthesizing it, and then practicing it. So, yeah, I'm really proud of this chapter. I think this is kind of the heart of the book. So I hope people really enjoy it.
Yeah, and I know Paul gave a lot of edits and such on this chapter. Let me answer real quick.
This is probably the only chapter that I may have written the majority of.
That and one coming up. Really quick, Collecting Chaos, I 100% agree with you, is people need to, if they're afraid of harming, don't do it. Red Hood, see you. Let me say this, Red Hood, in your question, in your response. We try to make it 100% clear that this is a resource guide, that we assume you probably have some experience in cleaning and pressing, and you're wanting to take that next step into conservation, that this is not for a novice or anything else. This is also not necessarily a how-to book. This is a book where we presume that you're coming in with a certain amount of knowledge, and we wrote it that way because of the community, the conservation community with the Facebook group and the questions we get, and us putting out the videos and us having the Sunday shows and all of that, right? So we don't start at the beginning. We kind of start you in the middle, so to speak. And we hope we make that 100% clear in the introduction, in the information on the back of the book. that hopefully will dissuade people in believing that they can buy this book and become an expert, because that is not the case, and that is not the way that we wrote it.
Yeah, I mean, that would be ridiculous. That would be like reading a Michael Jordan autobiography and thinking you could go win an NBA championship, right?
Yeah, like
I mean,
I say, I can
that's
read a
just
book
ridiculous.
on coding, and I can go out and build software.
Yeah, I mean,
brain surgery. You think I'm a brain surgeon?
Yeah, welcome to the channel, Red Hood. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, no, and I know Red
happy
Hood.
to have your comment.
Red Hood and I know each other.
I'll say this: we have in many places in the book, we talk about the ethics of conservation. So, believe it or not, in the paper conservation community, in the paper conservation literature, there's a lot of discussion on the ethics of conservation. And there's a very well-developed ethical code of conservation. And, you know, it's almost like the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm, right? We cover that in a lot of depth, okay? So we're not talking about it here because I don't think that's a lot of fun to talk about here. That's not very sexy. That's not here to hype the book, but it's covered in depth in the book in multiple places. That said, I'll actually take the other side of this argument of, you know, what somebody should do with the book. If it's your book, do what makes you happy, man. I think everybody should start practicing this stuff if they're interested in it. I just suggest you do it with your own books, and you do it with very inexpensive books. I would say do 100 books without an error before you take on somebody else's work. Why? Because you can easily do 100 books without an error and get an error in the 101st one. So it might even be better to do 500 books of your own without an error before you take anybody else's work on. So this is aimed at everybody. Everybody gets a little something different out of it. If you're a professional, but you don't have a good grasp of the literature, this may help you. If you are a hobbyist and you just want to start practicing, this will help you. So everybody can take what they need from this book, and everybody should do what makes them happy in this hobby. I am not a gatekeeper. I'm not here to say you shouldn't leaf cast or you shouldn't do this or that. I think everybody should do what makes them happy. I do think it's foolish for you to, you know, do 2 projects and then start taking clients on for money. I think that's a recipe for unhappiness on your part and your client's part. But that said, you know, I am not a gatekeeper by any means. So I think as many people as are interested in these sorts of techniques should be practicing them.
Yep. Well said, Paul. And I think I'm assuming this is the Red Hood in Las Vegas. If I remember right, there's also Red Hood I know that's down.
No, this looks like a different Red Hood from the icon.
Do what?
Loston says, reading How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way is not enough.
Not enough, yeah.
I mean, sadly, that's true, because I bought that book when I was a kid. Let's move on then.
Go ahead, Paul. We get into, oh my God, if you want to know about pulp and how to make pulp and preparation, and you can see my pulp down here at the bottom. I haven't showed that to anybody. So I have some beautiful white pulp. Paul did some gray, more gray tan pulp, but using the pressure cooker, and a lot of great information in this chapter about that and the different ways in which to leaf cast. And Peter lended a lot to this chapter that I didn't want to spoil. So Archie Comics, I use Classic Illustrateds, or I use Disney Comics and Stories for my training books.
So thank you, Professor. Genuinely, thank you. He and I have really been collaborating on our leaf casting journey for the last year. We've been sharing literature with one another. He's been doing phenomenal work. He obviously has a background as an actual paper scientist, something I am not. And it's been really satisfying and gratifying to work with him. one of the things that we tried to do here is we tried to take the terminology from the handmade paper community and really apply it to comic books so that when we use our language, we're actually speaking a language that people who make handmade paper would understand. We're using the same terminology. And, we also go into, again, there's some really phenomenal work that's been done, incredible work that's been done in this field in leaf casting. And we wanted to highlight all of kind of our heroes in the literature, people that have published papers that just kind of blew us away. So Patricia Ham published on pressure cooking your pulp to speed up the processing and make a furnish that's a little bit finer quality and gives better newly cast leaf. And she also commented on, for large projects, canning is one of the only ways you can reasonably preserve your pulp and do it in a way that it's ready to use when you're using it. And as a hobbyist, I can tell you, I'm a professional. I work a job. I have a family. I have hobbies outside of comic books. I'm trying to take care of my physique and exercise and everything else. And so if I have a project where I have an entire comic book where every wrap has to be leaf cast, and I want the newly cast leaf to match all the way through the book and look consistent, the only way to do that, there are a few ways, and we go through them in the book. But the most efficient, most effective, fastest way to do it is to make yourself a batch of pulp and then can it in these little 100 ml jars that are intended for, small jelly samples and such. And, every weekend when you get a chance to leaf cast 1 or 2 pages, you pop one of these jars open. And you can do that every weekend for all summer long until you get done with the book if you're a hobbyist. And so this is what the book is about. It's about taking the best ideas from the literature, synthesizing them for a lay reader, and then giving you practical examples of how to apply them in your comic book conservation hobby. And anyway, I could go on, but that's why I'm so excited about the book. And that's what I'm so excited about this chapter.
All right.
And Red Hood confirmed his identity by saying, "Mama."
All right. So, once we take you through all of those steps, you eventually get to that final part, right? Which is the reassembly, humidification, and pressing of the comic. Those final phases. Go ahead, Paul. So there are a couple of different ways in which you can reassemble, and reassembly is probably one of the most. I think reassembly sometimes is more of a pain in the ass than wet cleaning. And we have all gone through several different ways in which to stick a staple back in a damn book. And so I actually named the different ones. We have the loop method, which Larry and Rick Morgan use. You have the straight on method, which Paul has introduced, and then you have the template method, which I introduced. And I'm sure there's probably other methods out there too, but these were kind of the 3 that I want to discuss, and hopefully it helps people a little bit in reassembly because it is such a pain in the ass. And after you've done all this work on your book, and then to start wallowing out the staple holes of that cover, and you're missing the sides, and it's like, oh my God, it just drives you crazy.
I think enough said.
Enough said. All right. I think you went backwards. Did you? Or did I?
No,
went forward.
Okay, because this is the same slide.
Oh, yeah, it's the same
fucked up.
Oh.
Okay, I think this meant to be chapter 11. I must have screwed up. This is we talking to Matt Nelson and such, and Paul really I won't say forced me to write this chapter, but he strongly suggested that we had some that bridge that we bridge all this work and how it applies to third-party grading. I wanted to avoid talking about third-party grading because I've never graded any of my conserved books.
It's such an inevitability, though, in a lot of states.
It is an inevitability. Yeah. So, Chapter 11 is about that bridge between conservation, restoration, and third-party grading. And we get into some pretty gross detail, not meaning ugly, but deep, about how you can make sure that you get that gray conserve label and what to avoid, but then also what CGC's stance is. Yep. And we've taken that from Matt's book and then talking to Matt personally with that. Go ahead, Paul, because I know you did a lot of work.
So this chapter for me, I think, again, it's all about providing you with something practical for practical application, right? So it's great to be sciencey and in the books and, gee, it says here that, but you want something you can use. And from my perspective, I've just seen a lot of misunderstanding of the CGC rules.
Yep.
And the CGC rules they're actually fairly consistent. There are some corner cases that seem to not make sense until you understand that there's nuance. And, they had to make a decision and they had two values that they were trying to say, these are both important to us, but in this case, we can only have one of them. Which one are we going to take? And so we walk you through those corner cases and help you understand why CGC grades the way they do. We walk you through what you can expect from the process with them. And we walk you through, as Shelby says, if you're knowing what to expect, knowing what your work has to be in order to get the conserve label, when there's possibility that you're going to get another label. And, we also will caveat it by saying, look, CGC is not perfect. We're not perfect. People send books in all the time, expecting one thing, getting another. Some of the time, that's because you don't fully understand the rules. And this chapter is supposed to help you sort that out. Some of the time it's because somebody's made an error somewhere and that has to be sorted out a different way. But this chapter should educate you on some of the nuance that we get a lot of questions in the Facebook group and in Instagram and elsewhere, even on our YouTube channels. Why would this be this way? In fact, even people ranting and raving, I wasn't treated fairly. And when you look at the rules, they're actually fairly clear. They were applied correctly. Now, does that mean that they haven't made mistakes? Of course not. But I would say personally, my view of YouTube and Facebook and Instagram, about 80% of the rants I see are people just not understanding the rules, just being inexperienced and not understanding the very clear-cut rules that exist. So this chapter is meant to help those 4 out of 5 people. And then, the last 20%, you need to work with customer service over at CGC. We acknowledge that. I mean, but even that process, we talk even about that process a little bit. It's not a handbook on how to deal with their with their customer service, but we mention it.
Yep. So really quick too, Phil, did you want to say something?
I mean, no, not specifically. Yeah. I just have a lot of experience in that.
You do,
because we talk quite a bit about conservation here, but I'm one of the people that bridge that gap between, I got to know the rules, and I know the rules, and I know all the rules, and I understand why a lot of people that have been collecting for decades don't, because, as Paul said, there's a nuance to this, and there's been some subtle changes of the rules over time, certain things, certain preferences, and what have you. Just like in the book. One of the chapters, they show traditional peace fills. The very book that's shown was one of the ones that I, as someone knowing the rules and learning the rules, found out the hard way. The book came back in a restored label. And I was like, how'd this happen? And it was because right then they changed some standards. So that was how I found out that the rules changed. CGC doesn't put out, this is the list and this is everything. So this you know, it's
Yep.
going to be a little more comprehensive to get into that.
Yep.
Yeah. And Phil's actually been fundamental to me understanding a few of the subtleties as well. So appreciate you.
So really quick, got a message on Kickstarter, Lawson. We weren't inscribing books personally. We were autographing. But if you would like an inscription, we can definitely help you out with that. He sent us a message asking
Oh, yeah.
if he can have Lawson and Carolyn Wallace inscribed in the book, and we will be happy to inscribe it for you.
Would love to do that. Absolutely.
Love to do that. All right. So the last kind of big chapter is just kind of tying it all together, talking about the art, science, and future of comic book conservation. This really gets into the ethics and the importance of the field in terms of us evolving it, right? And if we want these values to start realizing what we think they should be, which is closer to fair market value as compared to purple label books, then we need to evolve our field, the education of people outside of this community, and follow a certain rule of ethics with the way that we do our work. So again, I think that speaks a little bit to what even Red Hood was talking about, right? Is this is not something where a person's just going to go out and start doing this, right? It's really about the ethics and the understanding of conservation and evolving the field. Also, I want to really quickly state, because it was in the previous chapter, we're not against restoration. Yeah. Never think that we say restoration is bad. Restoration has its place. And there are some people, just like I'm sure the previous owner of That Amazing Fantasy, or the book that Paul is pointing out.
If you think we're haters of restoration,
we are not.
Just look on the mantle.
Sometimes you want the best looking book possible. And that means getting someone that's very professional in terms of, and I wouldn't even call it color touch, right? I would call it almost recreation in some cases of the book to get it to that point. But every one of those people that I'm talking about that do that type of work, they also do a conservation step first, right? Before they do that actual second part. All right, go ahead, Paul. So chapter 11, I think we just kind of said that, and this talks about the ethics. This is something that Phil really opened my eyes to about the ethics and minimal intervention and minimal invasive techniques is where you should start, then move yourself up.
Yeah.
And I think the next slide is our special. I've had the extreme honor of getting to know Susan Ciccone over the past several weeks. Paul and I was on the phone with her for about 2.5 hours one afternoon. She is such a wealth of knowledge. Her and I stay in touch now, and we dedicated several pages here to her pioneering work, and it is well deserved.
So for those that don't know, Susan Ciccone actually trained in Paris at the National Museum, the Musée National, and as a traditional conservator, has all of the bona fides, came back to the States, was under Bill Sorrell's tutelage at the Restoration Lab for about 5 years, and then bought the Restoration Lab from him. She's still the proprietor of that. And so, she's worked on like a half dozen copies of Action One. She's just,
she's been premiered in Sotheby's auctions of books that she restored. I mean, you're talking about the upper crust.
She was their consultant for pop culture for the better part of a decade she was the recognized expert by Sotheby's.
Yeah, movie posters, pamphlets, anything ephemera. She was that person. So it's been really great to get to know her and really spotlight some of her work. I'm only showing this X-Men #1 she did, which she used minimal intervention techniques of simply dry cleaning and pressing because it, and in her words, what was right for the book.
Yeah.
And she expressed that so many times to me, is that I only do what's right for the book. And oh, I'd love to see that, Rick. And I'll go and tell you, there's about 5 more pages after this of her work, and you will be blown away by what she did with Amazing Fantasy 15. That book seems to be popping up a lot tonight. That she's done, and I could not be happier to consider her a friend now. So
yeah, if you're only casually familiar with her work, you may think it's restoration only, but as a matter of fact, like Phil, even though Phil's business is called Phantom Restoration, her work is called the Restoration, or her company is called the Restoration Lab. They'll both tell you, 30 or 40% of the work they do now is just simple clean and press. And then they do a 20% restoration removal. They do 50% conservation, and they do about 10% or less of, I didn't add all that up to make sure it was 100.
Hey, that was like 120%. Well, hey,
but they do a very small percentage of restoration anymore. And that's just because that's kind of where the market is these days, that, there's not as much demand for it. That said, going all the way back to the 80s, Susan and Bill sort of wrote the seminal work on the ethics of comic book conservation back in the 80s. And I don't think many people are aware of that, but we get into that as well. So yeah, really great to have her involved and to have a section of the book dedicated to her work, and, celebrating her as a pioneer.
Very much. All right, so the last chapter is us celebrating the community, because like I've said over and over, and that wasn't lip service, the community is so important to us. Y'all have inspired us, you've pushed us, what y'all have done tonight with the Kickstarter and all the kind words and the comments and the questions. It's all about you guys and gals. And so I wanted to devote a whole chapter just to the community and the contributions. So I've picked out some of the things that I really thought were innovative here in this preview. Go ahead.
Before we move on, I just want to say about this section that we could have put just our own work here. We could have promoted ourselves throughout this book. We could have used this book to try to sell services or other things or promote our YouTube channels primarily. Right. It was not what we were interested in doing. No. I'm in this community to be a bridge builder. I'm in this community to foster other people, help other people, and to network. And from the beginning, I said, I did an okay job doing this. But you know who did a job that I really loved? Larry did. And I really want to highlight that job that he did, right?
Right.
And by the way, Phil is so good at tape removal. Yeah, have I done it? Sure. Can I do it? Sure. Could we highlight my stuff? Sure. But you know what? I want to be, really, to me, this was to celebrate everybody's work. And so we picked out some of the projects that we thought exemplified the best of what's going on in the community. And also, not for nothing, I said it before, some people have done things that literally blew my mind to the extent that they
innovative.
They changed my perception of what's possible, right?
Yeah.
And so that's what this chapter's about. And again, hats off to all of you. And without further ado, let's see a few of them.
Yeah. So the first thing I had to throw in there was about the leaf casting. So Jerry and Larry, instead of going out, you could do what Phil did. You could buy a $6,000 machine, or you go down to your local hardware store and for a couple of $100, create one of these, which are vacuum tables. I like to call them suction tables, but vacuum tables, suction everywhere. So again, just innovative of I think somewhere in here I say, mother necessity is mother of invention. And when you have a need, it's just really amazing what people come up with.
Absolutely.
Go ahead, Paul. This is probably some of the earliest work of just incredible things. Peter bringing in the use of evaporust and the removal of rust and working with different techniques. Actually, earlier this week, we had someone talking about tide lines. If you notice here, Peter has tide lines in that first image, and through consecutive washes and stuff was able to remove a lot of that. So I would take, some of this. Now, there's some drawbacks to it, but the results speak for themselves. Aguilar gels, man, oh my God.
Really cool.
Those, I think there's a leap in trying to get to that, but you could mix this with calcium hydroxide. You can mix it with Bestine. You can do so many different things with it. And what Peter was able to achieve with removing these old adhesive stains is simply amazing. Amazing work that I had to put in here.
Yeah.
And then one of my favorite stories I wrote is Larry's story of the vanquishing of the Phantom Stain with the Ghost Rider. So I kind of wrote it like a 19th century, 1800s Gothic horror novel. And it's from the Spot's point of view of being dispelled by Larry. So it's kind of cute.
That was such good work. He had people calling him out as a faker.
Yeah.
All right. If you've hung out this far, thank y'all so much. But you don't want to miss this last little bit, some of the special announcements. And go ahead, I guess, if you're ready.
I'm ready.
Matt Nelson, the president of CGC, is going to write the foreword for the book. So I've actually got it already printed on this one. So we could not thank Matt enough for his encouragement, for his time. I spent about 2.5 hours with him a couple of weeks ago talking about the book, showing him the book. He's in the process of reviewing it right now over the holidays. And if that tells you anything about the work of conservation and the importance that even CGC places on it, because they want to see these things live, man. They want to see these things live on, and they know they're just these books are dying out there.
So for those that don't know, Matt's obviously the president of CGC today, but he was a comic shop worker. He was a comic shop owner. He was a conservator. He was a restorer. He founded his own restoration conservation company that eventually CGC acquired, and that's how he then rose through the ranks of CGC to become the president, is through that acquisition. He hired Kenny Sanderson and trained Kenny Sanderson. He trained directly under Bill Sorrell in terms of restoration, Matt did. So Matt's got bona fides in conservation for sure, but again, it mostly comes from this tradition of apprenticeship and from learning these processes, not really from a mastery of the literature. And so again, our angle is the experience is priceless, but there's a lot of stuff that's been figured out that just folks in our community aren't aware of. And we wanted to bring it to light and have some of the most skilled conservators in our hobby start messing around with some of these techniques that have been known by paper conservationists for some time, but not well known within our community. And Matt recognized immediately the value of that and graciously agreed to write the foreword to the book. And we're so appreciative of that.
All right. So next is very special announcements that no one knows about. But go ahead, Paul. Our second book is going to be out around summer of 2025. This is our how-to guide for comic book conservation. So in the way that this book, like I've said over and over, is a resource manual, we are going to take the person through step by step from our practical knowledge of conservation. This is kind of a mood board, so to speak, of what I feel like the cover should convey to the audience. But yeah, that will be out, and that will help someone that's wanting to undertake this. And the first chapter is all about practice, practice, practice. So for those people that were concerned earlier that we're not stressing that enough, the whole first chapter is just about how to think like a conservator, get into that mindset about how to build a workspace, how important practice is. And the book's a little bit further along than what some people might think, but yeah, that will be coming out. Then what won't be included in this book, but will be included in a book coming out hopefully at the end of the year, The Complete Guide to Leaf Casting for Comic Book Conservation. So Paul and I have already discussed what we need to do in terms of making this happen. Paul, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yeah, just again, some of the pioneers in this space, Esther Alcalay, Keiko Keys, Don Farnsworth, Guy Petherbridge. I literally read, and Shelby did as well, but I was voraciously and reread most of it. I've literally read a few hundred pages worth of peer-reviewed and how-to literature on leaf casting. What to do, what not to do, how to do it, how not to do it, how to do it so that, when the people that are doing this professionally, if you think an AF-15 is valuable, the people that are doing this professionally are working on things that are much more valuable than an AF-15, right?
And one of a kind, something,
literal,
whatever, right?
I mean, how many copies of AF-15 are there in the census, Phil?
I mean, several thousand.
Right. We're talking about people that are preserving treasures, like one-of-a-kind pieces of paper that Charles Darwin wrote on, or, a copy of the Magna Carta, that kind of stuff. They've been tasked with taking care of this paper. They're not experimenting on the paper. They know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And so we took all of that literature and we've been applying it to comic books, and I think to good effect. And so I said, the chapter 8 from this book being in many ways the heart of the book, it ought to be expanded into its own book with like just dozens and dozens of not experiments, but examples. And so that's a passion project. One of the things I'm very proud of is when we started the Facebook group, to my knowledge, there were like, I don't know, 3 or 4 people that had leaf casted comic books at that point. And maybe not even that many. And there are now at least a dozen people leaf casting comic books, right? And that's been less than a year we created that Facebook group. And I'm not taking credit for that entirely, but I think we've had input into that process, and we've normalized it, and we've also democratized it. And again, I'm not taking credit. A lot of other people have been working to democratize it as well, including Jerry the Jitterbug, principally. But we had our own contribution to make to that. That's a little bit different than Jerry's, and I'm excited to bring it to you.
definitely. Yeah, I had to force Paul to stop writing on chapter 8, and it's like, we'll just write another book, Paul. Stop it.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm real excited. Again, thank you to the community. I can't express that enough. And like Paul expressed, this book isn't. We're bringing it to market, but it's really about all of you and what you've given. So we can't thank you enough.
Absolutely. Thank you all for the kind words. Thank you all for the support. Thanks to all the backers. Thank you for all these kind words. And we are looking forward to getting this book in your hands, getting your feedback. Again, I want to thank the folks that contributed. I want to thank our co-hosts here. And I want to thank all of the viewers as well, not only of that are with us live here, but that have supported the channel over the last, few years. And I want to thank my colleagues here, Larry and Phil and Rick and the professor and other Rick and Jason. And it's just really, it's been a wonderful process, and I really appreciate all of you. I'm really full of gratitude today. So thank you all.
Yeah. All right.
Looking forward to
it. I think we should just remind people that the place to get the book from now through the last day of January is going to be the Kickstarter. Link is in the description here. It's already fully backed. We've already met the stretch goals. So support it. You're going to get it at the best price, and you're going to get it at the same time. As soon as it's available, when everybody gets it, you're going to get the extra perks. And after that, you'll want to get it on Amazon. It'll be print on demand there, and it'll be just a couple bucks more. So thanks again, everybody. Until next time, take care of one another.
Hey, y'all, I think this is the last one before Christmas.
Should we
have
talk
a Merry
about
Christmas.
Happy
Merry
holidays.
Christmas,
And also, yes, in terms of housekeeping, we will have a year-end wrap-up show 1 week from today as well. So hopefully we'll see you there. You wanna sign us off, Shelby?
All right. Well, again, thank you all. I can't express enough all the kindness and words and support and everything else. Thank you. But most of all, remember, peace, love, and comics. Bye all.
Bye now.
Thanks for tuning in.